Good Tuesday morning to you. As we continue to talk about David this week, chapters 17 through 23 of 1 Samuel really get into a lot of the dysfunction between Saul and David. It all boils down to this. Saul was incredibly jealous of David. David had been successful against the Philistines, and Saul knew that the power of the Lord, the Spirit of the Lord, was with David. In fact, when they come back into the city, the women come out with their tambourines, they come singing, and they say, "Praise King Saul, for he has killed his thousands. Praise David, for he has killed 10,000. And immediately Saul's heart hardens, and he turns against David. Now, there's a lot of stuff that is happening between chapters 18 and chapters 23. Saul tries to take David's life twice by throwing a spear at him. David flees. He returns back, hoping that he can figure out why Saul doesn't like him anymore. David and Jonathan, from the moment David enters into the house, David and Jonathan have a pact. It says that they love each other's souls as if they love their own soul. They see in one another the same love that they have for themselves. And so there's this beautiful bond that happens between Jonathan and David. And yet, Jonathan, as Saul's son, is not happy with this covenant, this bond that they have. In fact, if you make your way through chapter 20 and 21, you'll even see that Saul threatens the life of his own son for making a pact for protecting David. Now, David is humble in spirit. So even though Saul is trying to manipulate the situation, even though he's trying to kill him, he's also wrestling with it. He tries to give David his daughter as a wife. And David says, "Who am I that I would become the king's son-in-law?" His humility seems to infuriate Saul even more than his victory. And then Saul's daughter actually falls in love with David. And David is given this incredible command: go and kill 100 Philistines. The command is actually this: go and bring back the foreskins of 100 Philistines. I think killing them is the best way to achieve that goal. And so he goes and he says, I'll do this. I'll earn that honor of becoming the king's son-in-law. And so he goes and kills the Philistines and comes back and marries Saul's daughter, and in the process realizes that Saul's daughter loved David the whole time. This infuriates Saul even further. Chapters 18 through 23 are an example of how Saul wrestled with a hardened heart. Now, there's one detail that you'll see 3 times within those chapters. You will see in your translation something to the effect of, "And God allowed an evil spirit to come upon him." Some translations even go as far as to say, "And God gave an evil spirit." That's something that we might really wrestle with. God is sovereign, and so God has control of all of the good in the world, and we have to expect that God also has control of the evil in the world. I think that's a hard thing for us to wrestle with in our modern Christian understanding, that God would give someone an evil spirit. I was looking a little bit at the Hebrew words and looking at how it's translated, and I just don't think it translates well to English for us to truly understand what God's doing. I think the safer way of understanding this is God allowed the evil that was already within Saul to be more present than he was. God allowed that sense of jealousy, that sense of rage that was already there. God allowed it to consume him and to control his actions. When we think about how we relate to David and really especially to this relationship that he has with Saul, I wonder if we've ever been in a situation that no matter how good we did, no matter how hard we tried, the person or the situation we were involved in just was against us. Have we ever had a coworker or a family member or a friend that just could not see the good we were trying to do? Could not see that God was leading us to do good, and only could see their own jealousy and rage in that situation. living in such a broken world, I don't think it's hard for any of us to assume the worst sometimes and not see the best. I am sure that this is why this is so important in the commands. Do not bear false witness, right? Think of one another in the kindest possible way. It's an important distinction of our faith that when we look at each other in the same way David saw Saul, trying to find a way to reconcile, trying to find an opportunity for a new relationship to build, instead of Saul, who only saw his own jealousy and rage and inabilities. At the end of the day, David was successful because he had the power of the Lord behind him. And Saul had turned away from the Almighty. And God, in his divine wisdom, allowed Saul to continue on that path, to continue on a path where evil and a hardness of heart controlled his actions to the point of rage. It's a sad reality that God allows this. And to be quite honest, I wish God didn't. I wish it was easier than that. But then again, I love that God gives us free will, the ability to come to him on our own and remember that he is our Lord, the giver of all life. So, can you relate? Can you relate to David, who is struggling with a person in your life that is just not seeing the best and just really holding on to a jealousy and a rage despite what you do? Have you ever been Saul, where you haven't looked at the best in someone else either? Have you ever been Saul in a way that limited your relationships and the good that God was doing in those around you? This might be a hard one because I think in many ways we really can relate to both of those characters. And I hope that on this Tuesday, most importantly, we return back to the Lord, that we seek him in all that we do, we ask for forgiveness, we turn our hearts to the one who promises to lead us and guide us. Have a great Tuesday.